This single email generated $44,000 in revenue for one of our clients in just 48 hours. Do you want to know the difference between that email and the one they sent just a week before that only made $15,000? Well, in this video, I'm going to break down the exact copywriting framework that we use with our clients to consistently generate upwards of $20, $25, $30,000 per email we send. Okay, so before we start, who am I and why should you care about the video? For those of you who it's your first time on the channel, my name is Moldovanu. I run an email and SMS marketing agency working specifically with direct-to-consumer e-commerce brands. I put a couple of our screenshots here. I have a ton more on our website if you want to check it out, but pretty much all my clients are pulling in anywhere from 40 to 60% of their total business coming from email. Okay, we send a couple million emails per month, so I think I'm a bit qualified to speak on this. Last thing I'll say here, if you're not in my free email marketing newsletter already, I'd really recommend getting in. It's completely free, and I send out usually 1 to 3 times per week different tips, strategies, and kind of like insider secrets that I'm using with my clients that you can implement immediately. So get in there if you want. So first things first, I want to start with what actually makes a good subject line, okay? Because that is really the opening gates of getting people to click on the email and then seeing your copy in the first place, okay? So it's very important to understand that people nowadays are scanning dozens of different subject lines, okay? So your subject line needs to be crystal clear. Typically what I like to do is just kind of skip all of the clever wordplay and all of the fluff that you normally would think about when you think about copy, and just literally, I like to say, keep it concise and just say the thing. Like, just tell people what they're getting, tell people what they can expect when they open the email, and tell people what is in it for them, because that's ultimately what's going to determine whether they open it or not. Okay, you have to understand when someone is scanning their inbox, they're looking at, it's basically a competition. It's you against the other 20 people that they're looking at one time. So what's going to make them want to open your email? Okay, just think about that when you're writing the subject line in the actual copy of the subject line. So if you're offering some type of discount or some type of perk, make sure you say that in the subject line. I've seen a lot of brands, like in their welcome email, for example, they'll give away like 10% off, but they don't say anything about it in the subject line. They're just saying like, hey, welcome to the brand. And it's like, no, tell people like, hey, you're getting 10% off here. Here's your 10% off. You know, that'll be way more likely to get opened. So that's the first thing. And then also make sure you're adding in curiosity whenever you can, right? That's the other component of it. Make people kind of, raise their eyebrow and pique people's interest and get them back to the site. Okay, so different examples of how you can do this. This completely changed how I sleep. Okay, so what we're doing there, we're not telling them what is changing the sleep, right? We're not telling them what the magical solution is, but we're teasing them a little bit with a benefit. Okay, so people are going to click on it and be like, hey, I want to figure out, what these guys are talking about. What changed the sleep? I'm not getting good sleep. Okay, so that's the first thing. Our founders swear by this, so you're having some social proof there, piquing their curiosity. What are the founders of the company swear by? Also, playing on the role of kind of like FOMO here, one feature that everyone misses. Okay, so you're basically hinting at like some type of insider information, some type of secret, and people, innately want to, be in on the secret. Okay, so just keep these things in mind when you're actually writing your subject lines. So when it comes to actual general rules of thumb for copy, I want to go over these 3 main points. Okay, these are very important to understand. First things first, make sure you're keeping your copy very skimmable. People don't read emails anymore. I said this in a ton of my other videos, but you want to keep your copy short and concise and, very easy to be skimmed. Very simple, very strategic. You want to keep your copy generally. Each email should be under 100 words. Honestly, I'll be totally honest with you. Unless you're writing like a longer type of email that's purposely made to be long. I'll talk about that in a second. But generally about under 100 words is best. Try to use short sentences, punchy headlines, and give people value immediately. Think about it like this. When someone opens your email, you have a certain amount of time to capture their attention before they get bored and click off. So think of it that every time someone opens your email, an imaginary timer starts ticking down, and you realistically have like less than a second. Okay, but we'll call it 2 seconds. So as soon as they open the email, the timer starts for 2 seconds and starts ticking down. You have 2 seconds to show them something that they're going to deem valuable, or show them something that dictates whether or not they want to keep reading. And obviously the goal is to have them on the email as long as possible and eventually get them to click through to the site. I find that having the timer analogy there and just thinking about that really helps when writing actual copy. And again, just always assume that your reader has a very short attention span, because they do, to be quite honest. And I mean, we all do, right? The average human nowadays is on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, like, it's just inevitable. Another big thing I want to point out here is that your emails, they should not feel like ads per se, right? They should feel like conversations, and you should be speaking directly to that shopper or that reader, right? Think about it. They signed up for your list. Like, this is a very intimate thing here. We're not sending out an ad on a billboard on a busy highway, right? This is like a cyber approach, right? These people, they know us, they like us, and they trust us. So you should be talking directly to them. And that makes people feel heard, okay? And it kind of elicits more responses. And another one here, just avoid over explaining or, over designing emails unless it's like a sale or announcement email. Okay. If you're just kind of pushing a product, try not to have a million propositions, which leads me to my second point, or I guess my third point. Every email has one job and one purpose and one message. Do not overload your emails with tons of different messages that kind of just compete with each other and, overlap with each other. Like if you're pushing a product, the entire email should only be about that product and should only be about the fact that you're launching this new product. Like you shouldn't have anything else in there because there's kind of just a thing called, I'm sure you've heard, there's a principle called decision fatigue, right? The more decisions you give someone, the more fatigued they will get in having to actually decide which one's best, right? So just only let them focus on one thing and one thing only. That's what's best for conversions. Now, when it comes to the actual like structure itself of the copy, what should you kind of look for? Okay, so first of all, we talked about the subject line, but I'll just reiterate here. Be clear, lead with curiosity, urgency, or some type of benefit. Okay, just what is in it for them? That's what you should be thinking about. Now, next is the actual preview text. So this, don't overcomplicate this, I'll be honest. It should basically just support the subject line. Usually it's just a sentence or so, or just a couple words that kind of reiterate what was said in the subject line or maybe just expand on it. And so that's what you look for in the preview text. For the actual like body of the email itself, right? First things first, you always want to have a headline, as you can see from these examples that we made that I put here. Always want to have a headline in the emails. And the headline should be about 2 to 6 words. It should be very punchy, and you should have some type of benefit or emotional hook. Basically, let them know what you're giving them. They should be able to read the headline and instantly know everything they need to know about what the actual email is in. And they can decide from there whether or not they want to keep reading. Okay, so if you look here, the headline is huge. It's not that many words, and we're instantly telling them, okay, this is an us versus them email. And they instantly know what they're actually getting as soon as they open the email, right? Us versus them. This shopper knows what the purpose of the email is. Okay. So that's for the headline. The subheadline, as you can see here, goes right under the headline. Usually it's just about a sentence. I wouldn't recommend doing more than that. Again, just kind of building context and leading down to that call to action. So us versus them. Here's why Bikini Fleece stands out. Care equals longevity. Here's how to keep your prints looking brand new wash after wash. Okay. So instantly, just from reading the headline and the subheading, the shopper knows like what they're getting, right? They know why they're there. Okay. So that's a really important thing that you want to make sure you're including. Call to action button and the text on the actual button itself. You should be saying generally for most of your emails, something like shop now. Okay. You'd be surprised at, how much the actual copy on the button influences conversions. Again, people are sometimes, I hate to say it, but just kind of like mindlessly scrolling. And so depending on what you say in the actual button, you can really elicit a lot of responses that maybe otherwise wouldn't have done anything. Okay, so usually I just like to say shop now, shop fleece now, shop custom BTF prints now, right? Usually some form of shop now works well. And for the actual bridge section, this is basically the bridge, if you're not familiar, is like the middle of the email. And by the way, I have a whole other video on my channel. It's like a 40-minute long tutorial of Figma design, how to actually design high converting emails. I talk about what goes into high converting emails. I talk about what to look for, what to include. And I also design a brand new welcome email like for you guys, in the actual email itself. So if you guys want to see that. But yeah, what I was saying here was the bridge section. This should really just kind of be like the main idea of the email. So for example, we have the head in here, us versus them. We have the subheading. Here's why our fleece stands out. Call to action button. And then here we have a kind of body section, but instead of listing out our points in massive paragraphs, we're using an infographic. We're using an actual chart to display this information with short, skimmable copy. Okay. Again, look at the copy on these pages. They're not very dense. You want to avoid dense copy. Again, like this entire email is probably way less than 100 words. I'll be honest. It's probably like 60, 70 words. And these are really high converting emails. That's why I included them in here. Okay. So always make sure that your body section is giving the proper information, but doesn't have a whole lot of information overload in terms of the way you're presenting it. Okay. The only exception for like having really long paragraphs in the body section is if you're doing that on purpose. And what I mean by that is, for example, something we'll do a lot with our clients is we will have an email go out that's just highlighting one specific review from a shopper or from a customer. Okay. And it'll be purposely like a paragraph long because the review is just so dense. It has so much good information in there. And it's kind of like a counterintuitive thing, but the review is so long and so thorough that it really just helps with social proof. And if someone reads the whole thing, they're going to be basically like 90% convinced that they should purchase the product again. So unless you're doing something like that, unless you're talking about like the brand history or the brand mission statement, and like you really want to have like an impactful piece, I really wouldn't recommend it. And just a disclaimer, if you are doing that, naturally, less people are going to read through the whole thing. Just understand that. So that is what you can expect there for the actual structure of the copy. Now, another thing that's very important to understand when it comes to like emotional triggers, it's a common concept in psychology, actually, the concept of triggers. So different things are going to trigger different types of shoppers and different types of people, right? So for example, it's very important to understand the different triggers when it comes to writing copy, because depending on what triggers you're using and what emotional triggers you have in the copy, you'll get a certain type of shopper, okay? So for example, first one is curiosity, okay? So use case would be for subject lines, piquing people's interest, showing people previews, teaser emails. That all plays into curiosity. People naturally just want to learn more. An example of this, the one thing most people forget before checkout. Okay, so that's one type of trigger. Next is urgency. That's another very popular one, okay? This is things like sales emails. This is your last chance to purchase. Discount reminders. Hey, your discount's expiring. The offer ends tonight. Don't miss it. A lot of people respond very well to urgency. Next is social proof. So some people just need a little bit more convincing from other people as opposed to the actual company itself. This would be testimonials, media logos. If you're a brand that's been featured in a lot of different publications, in your emails, make a banner. We've been featured in Forbes, GQ, Esquire, whatever, right? And kind of, flex that a little bit because people like seeing that. Benefit first triggers. So, leading with a feature, leading with some type of, FAQ, right? People can also love looking at that type of stuff. Risk reversals here as well. These are really good to put in the welcome flow or like new customer emails. Someone who's maybe not as familiar with your brand, try it risk-free for 30 days, basically reassuring them that they're not going to get burned by purchasing from you. Also, exclusivity. So some people respond really well to exclusivity. This would be things like early access, a VIP list, back in stock, or order before it's gone. You're the first one to know about this deal, that type of thing. Some people just like to be early to things, and you can get a lot of good responses from that. And finally, we don't use this too often, but fear. Fear is, a good one to use, and it's very effective. Things like problem agitation emails, right? Health and wellness warnings, right? Financial pain points. Like if your product solves a health problem, right? If your product solves a financial problem for people, right? You can use that kind of like fear approach to almost kick people into gear and explain to them, hey, you're losing out on your health. You're becoming unhealthy here, and we can help you with that. Our product solves that, right? So a lot of people will respond to fear very well as well. So an example of this one habit is keeping you unhealthy. And then obviously they click into the email and you could actually explain it from there. But those are the different triggers. Very important to understand them. I have like a high level overview, but you get the main picture. Now, also I have a whole separate video on my channel, basically how to use AI, how to use artificial intelligence to write email copy for you. So I'll actually teach you in this video how to train a bot to understand all of these concepts and then how to learn your brand specifically. So you can just literally plug in and say, hey, I need a welcome email, and it'll spit out copy for it and it'll follow all these principles. So if you want to see that, click into the video. A lot of good stuff in there. Now, finally, I want to talk about call to actions, okay? Because this is something that's kind of overlooked a lot, I find. But you want to basically include as many call to actions as humanly possible without making the email look weird, of course. But there is actually, I've noticed, a direct correlation between the amount of call to actions you include and the amount of revenue you'll generate. It's kind of silly, but people need to be reminded as much as possible. Again, this is like cold traffic who you're basically stopping in the middle of their day and reminding them that you exist. And so, sometimes people are mindlessly scrolling. Like I said, you need to remind them and kind of nudge them back to the site. And the more instances of that you're doing, obviously the higher a chance you'll get to go back to the site. Always make sure you have a call to action above the fold in the email, the fold being everything you can see without actually scrolling. So that basically catches the readers who never scroll down. They're just opening to see what you're all about, and which is a lot of people like, by the way. You always want to have a button kind of like mid-email in the bridge section. These are good for when you're kind of explaining the features, explaining the benefits of the actual product. You always want to have one at the end of the email. So for example, in a welcome email, what we do, we have a button in the top of the email, right above the fold. We have categories with different products. Each of them has their own respective button. And then at the bottom, we have another call to action section saying, hey, don't forget your 10% off. We have another call to action. Okay, so just littering it with call to actions tastefully, of course, but the more the better. And the actual copy on the buttons, again, pretty simple, but always kind of be direct with people and just kind of nudge them to the site. So shop now, secure your pair, show me the results, things like that. Don't overthink the copy on the buttons. It's more important like where you're putting them and how frequent they are. And finally, I want to go over very quickly what not to do when it comes to copy. So I talked about a lot of this, but again, pretty much never write long paragraphs unless, of course, you're running that specific type of email every once in a while, which should be very rare, by the way. But yeah, don't write long paragraphs. Keep it short, keep it concise to the point. That's what's going to work best for you guys. Do not use boring, generic statements like, hey, we're excited to bring you this offer. People don't care about that. You need to lead with benefits, okay? If it doesn't improve the shopper's life or satisfy something for them personally, they don't really care, right? People are selfish nowadays. nowadays. That's just consumerism nowadays. Everyone's looking out for themselves when it comes to the actual market. So you need to make sure that there's something in it for them. Okay. People aren't just going to, scroll through your content for no reason. Again, really important one here. Do not sell multiple things in one email. Always lead and focus on one thing. Okay. I've seen welcome emails with literally like 15 different products in it, 15 different selling points. It's like, guys, focus on one thing and one thing only. The rest will do itself. And finally, this one's pretty simple, but don't start emails with like boring intros like, hey, hope you're doing well, or hey, Philip, hope you're having a great day. I've seen a lot of those, just get into it, right? Just get into the main idea. Again, you have a split second to capture people's attention. Just tell them what you have right out of the gate. I guarantee you, if you implement these for a couple emails, you'll see revenue start to rise. If you want us to come in and start implementing these exact strategies into your business so you can see similar results, click the first link in the description to book a free call with me, or click this video on screen to learn all about the core Klaviyo automated flows and how to set them up in your account. Sounds good, guys? I will see you all in the next video.